Joining us now to help us unpack some of the latest news around my Social Security and yours is Nancy Altman. Nancy is president of Social Security Works, and she is chair of the Strengthen Social Security campaign. She's a good friend of the program, and we're always delighted to have her on. Nancy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, this is being an interesting week, I would say, for Social Security. Number one, this may sound like a little bit of inside baseball stuff, but it's important. The trustees report, which is an annual report from the government on the state of Social Security's finances, came out this week, and people are already spinning it. So I wanted to, first of all, talk to you about that and what it really said. So can we start with that? Maybe give us just a couple minutes about what this report is and what it says this year?
Absolutely. The Social Security is a very prudently, carefully managed program. The funds are, these are the monies that are paid in are held in trust for the American people. So the history from the very beginning is to look at very carefully. So every year there's a trust fund and there's a board of trustees, and every year by law they report to Congress the state of Social Security. They've been doing this since the first benefits were paid back in 1940. They've never missed a report in wartime, anytime. They always report. So this year's report just came out today. Another part of this is they project out very long distance to make sure, again, that this money is very closely monitored. And the news here is what it has been, which is Social Security is prudently managed. It can pay every benefit on time and in full for another couple decades. Most projections for budget goes out 10 years. This is fine for the next 20 years, and a very modest shortfall after that, which can be easily addressed. And in fact, the reality of this, of the report, is that expanding Social Security, which is what we should be doing, is extremely affordable. This report today makes it absolutely clear that is so.
I want to get to that in a second, Nancy, but first, I'm not sure, maybe you know of another government program like this, but I'm not aware of too many government programs that have to report their fiscal viability and ability to sustain themselves and be self-sustaining decades out into the future, except Social Security.
That's exactly right. It, as I say, for most budget, for the Defense Department and all of those things, 5 years is typical. 10 years is actually quite long. Social Security projects out a very long time. The traditional, since 1965, it's been projecting out 75 years. And what's really actually ridiculous is starting in the Bush years, the Bush administration required infinite time horizon, even though our planet's only going to be here another 4.5 billion years. But 75 years, when in context, the program's only 80 years old. So it reports out short-term, 10 years, 25 years, 50 years, 75 years, infinite. And the news is that on a combined basis, Social Security can pay every penny of benefits through 2034. That's actually 1 year longer than was projected last year. Last year was 2033. Now it projects again, as it has done for recent years, that, and this is a little bit inside baseball, that there are actually two funds,
right?
And together they can pay every penny of benefits through 2034. There's enough revenue coming in, and 3/4 of benefits without Congress doing anything whatsoever, essentially infinitely from then on.
And the two funds, just to let me jump in there, because I know, we got a lot of people listening, is the two funds are the largest fund by far is the retirement fund. And then I think maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 1-2% of that is the disability insurance fund, right?
That's exactly right. And it's a little bit of an historical accident. The first fund is retirement, but also survivors, the life insurance. It's technically called the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund. That was set up in 1939. Then in 1956, a new program, disability insurance benefits, were added, and there was a separate trust fund. Now, for decades, experts have said there's really no need for two funds. And that there is funding from time to time. You have to rebalance between the funds, just the way investors do between their stocks and bonds. You would think in a well-run government that the trustees and Treasury and the Social Security Administration could just rebalance. In other words, 6.2% is withdrawn from everyone's pay, matched by their employers, and that gets sent to Washington. That's the last you know of it, except it gets divided into the two funds. The division, exactly how much goes to each, is set by Congress, which is kind of crazy, but that's the way it is. And so it requires an act of legislation to change that, to rebalance it.
And this gets important. Nancy Altman, president of Social Security Works, and I'm going to kind of recap that and see if I'm getting it right. But this gets to be important because, number one, as you say, Congress has created two funds, and for some reason, even though it's all being paid for the same purpose when it comes out of our paycheck, which is to say to give us Social Security upon retirement or disability. But number one, and then number two, Congress is, I guess why this gets relevant now is because this report says that the disability fund, the very small fund, is running low on money. And normally what you would do is you would, and in fact, Congress has done it 10 times already or something, shift funds from the big fund to make sure that doesn't happen. But aren't they really trying to create hysteria instead?
Exactly. They're trying to manufacture a crisis. They're holding hostage Social Security. Really, Social Security is extremely popular, works extremely well. So what the opponents have done is tried to undermine confidence. They say, we know you love Social Security, but it won't be here for you. Well, it's hard to say that when it's on such sound funding that it, even if Congress doesn't act for 20 years, it's going to be paying its benefits. So they're figuring out another crisis. Oh, yeah, but the disability fund, that one, and they're holding it hostage the same way they've tried to do with the debt limit, with other must-pass legislation. And it's really an attempt to do what has been routine. And in fact, I was Alan Greenspan's assistant back in 1982, and during that period, Congress actually overbalanced. They took too much money away from the Disability Insurance Fund because they were worried about the Old Age Survivors Fund, and that money it's never been equalized. They did a little bit, restored a little bit in the 1990s. They knew they had to do more, and they should just. It's just not a big deal, but it is. The other side is treating it like the sky is falling.
And it's so hard to get through the noise machine on some of this. It feels, they have Fox News or whomever. They're always on TV or radio saying, "Oh, the Social Security Fund." Sometimes they don't even specify which one, but it's running out of money. Americans won't have the money when they need it to create a false sense of hysteria. I would say, how do we sort of cut through that noise machine and tell people, hey, listen, this is routine. Nothing's running out of money. There's plenty to go. What's the short answer when someone says, let's say at work or something, yeah, I heard it's running out of money.
Yeah, I think the answer is that we are the richest country in the world at the richest moment in our history. We provide extremely low benefits. There is no question we can afford Social Security as its currently level of benefits. We can afford expanded benefits. It is to cut through the noise and get to the values, because this is really a question about values. It's a question of what kind of economic security do we collectively want to provide for our families. And every poll shows that Social Security's benefits are too low. People think they should be higher. So I think the way to cut through the noise is just to understand that this is kind of inside accounting, and the reality is that Social Security is self-financed. There are many, many ways to bring in increased revenue that are dedicated to Social Security. The American people want that to happen. So let's put the cart and the horse in the right place. The first question is, what level of economic security do we provide? How much of that is now financed through current contributions, and what's what more needs to be done and what's the fairest way to make up that difference. And most people think, given how much money has gone to the top and how much income inequality has hurt Social Security's financing, that the wealthiest should pay their fair share. And Richard, if I can just make one more point of that, I mentioned that I was Alan Greenspan's assistant in 1982. At that time, Social Security, after those amendments, was projected to pay all benefits in full and on time through 2057. Now, why is it only 2033 today? One of the major changes that the Greenspan Commission could not anticipate was that so much money over the last few decades would go to the top and everybody else's wages would stagnate. So go ahead.
And that gets us to, you mentioned something at the beginning, and I want to loop back to that, Nancy Altman, president of Social Security Works, because that to me gets to something you said at the beginning, which is this report shows that the fund is not only overall is not only stable, but that we can expand benefits. Talk a little bit about that. Why does this lead us to that conclusion, and what would that look like? We
currently spend about 5% of gross domestic product on Social Security. 5%, not 12%, not 18%, 5%. In 2035, and indeed at the end of the century, we'll be paying around 6%, or a little bit over. So we're talking about going from 5% to 6%. Germany, I think, spends about 12% of its GDP. Most other industrialized countries spend much more. So the shortfall is that 5% to 6%. It's about 0.9% over 75 years. And we are so wealthy, there is no question that if we wanted to, we could spend more of our GDP, especially at a time when we have an aging population. It makes sense that we increase the level of benefits and get the very wealthy to pay their fair share.
And so, of course, we do that, as regular listeners of this show know. The best way to do that is by lifting the cap on that payroll tax so that a billionaire pays in at the same rate as someone earning, let's say, minimum wage, right?
Well, I think that is actually the least that we should do. All that does is require a proportionate payment by people who are making billions of dollars and people who are on, making minimum wage. I mean, I think our country is founded on a much better sense of equality, and that I think what makes sense is on top of that we have a robust estate tax, which incidentally Thomas Paine, one of our founding fathers, proposed back in the 1790s. He proposed benefits for old age and disabled paid for with an estate tax, because he understood what did we fight for? We fought to get rid of aristocracy and royalty and this kind of inherited landed wealth. And so estate tax is an equalizer. It helps the problem of this income inequality, this upward redistribution of wealth, and it would provide stable and sufficient revenue to raise Social Security benefits.
Well, that's a great point. And by the way, I should mention, since you are too modest to do so yourself, that there is a fine reissue of Thomas Paine's Agrarian Reform, where I believe he made that suggestion with a foreword by none other than yourself, Nancy Altman.
Thank you so much. And as a plug, you can get it on Amazon for 99 cents. You can download it to your e-reader.
Well, I'm going to recommend that everybody do that. I certainly enjoyed reading it, and we're going to have to leave it there. But Nancy Altman, president of Social Security Works and chair of the Strengthen Social Security campaign, as always, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And we will be right back after this. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and this is the Zero Hour.